this week on the Backtable podcast.
What I envision in morning rounds, instead of the PDF that gets put up on LinkedIn or Twitter, I'm so happy to have this published in blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Imagine instead that you just basically create a video that's like, hey, it's Rusty. I just got a paper published in JVIR on stenting over the renal veins. Here are the 3 things you need to know. You can do it. It doesn't cause a problem. We looked at 50 patients and it was a case-controlled study. If you want to learn more, here's the PDF.
Right.
So it allows people to be like, oh, I don't like Rusty. I'm not going to read that paper, or I don't do venous stent. I'm going to skip over it. But if you're interested, you can get all the real data down to the PDF. So it's a more efficient way to, in my opinion, to learn and stay up to date.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Backtable podcast. Really excited to have another guest in studio. Lucky to have a friend of the show, recurring guest, Rusty Hofmann. He's been on the show before with Brian Harley. Shout out to Brian for bringing on Rusty back in the day. Episode 100, which is crazy to think of because we're like over 500 now, 550. So it was a minute. It was a minute ago. And Rusty's in town in San Diego, happens to be fishing in town with some friends. And so I thought we'd have him over to the studio. For those who listen to the show regularly, you probably remember episode 100, Rusty telling the story of Grand Rounds, which is an incredible story. If you haven't listened to that one, please go back and listen or even just revisit it. I wanted to have him come by and chat a bit about his current project, new project, one of many, but something really exciting. And just a quick, in case you don't know who Rusty is, and that would be crazy if you're in practicing IR, but Rusty was the chief of IR for 20 years at Stanford. He's currently the chief of industry partnerships at Stanford. He's a serial entrepreneur involved in a lot of projects. Welcome back to the show, Rusty.
Hey, it's good to see you. You guys have really grown up. I mean, I was a Zoom in my office with Hartley, and now we're in a studio in San Diego. So kudos.
Yeah, and I was just in New Orleans last week, sitting down with Tyler Sandow. We're going to have a regional studio in New Orleans because we have so many guys down there that contribute pretty often. New Orleans is a big music town. So we're actually able to rent some space that's like built for podcasting there. And then we're going to do another one in Nashville.
Oh.
So we need to like have these little regional studios.
How close to Bourbon Street?
Well, it's actually right next to the fairgrounds. So if you're going in town for Jazz Fest, literally like you walk to get into the entrance. Have you been to Jazz Fest before?
No.
It's awesome. Lots of music. And the studio's right next to the fairgrounds, so they do a lot of parties and stuff in the studio. It's got New Orleans vibes. And I think I told you, my wife and I went to med school down there, so it's kind of like, if we weren't living here in San Diego, we'd be living in New Orleans.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Less bugs and humidity and hurricanes in San Diego, for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. The food is much better there, and the music. But yeah, no, we're loving it, living here. So, Rusty, since the last interview with Hartley, lots happened with Grand Rounds. Can you give us a quick update on Grand Rounds now included health?
Yeah. Grand Rounds does pretty much almost everything in healthcare except cut people open. We do healthcare navigation and virtual primary care, virtual specialty care for over 50 million Americans. A couple thousand people work at the company now. It's a really big company. So the company got big enough that we then acquired Doctor on Demand and then built out the whole virtual stuff, and then rebranded to Included Health because it's kind of got a double meaning. One is like, we want to make sure everyone's included in healthcare. We have a bunch of different products for specific types of populations, but also it's like, it's really anything's included. We will handle claims issues. We'll help you get Lipitor, or we will get you a second opinion on your cancer diagnosis. I'm still run the company and still a very large shareholder. So for disclosure there.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. And I even recently listened back to episode 100 where you're talking about working with Home Depot, and I guess you're coming with these like Walmart, you're working with big companies, right?
Right. So we actually did, it's interesting, we did a 3-state study with Walmart over 3 years in the Southeast, and we provided virtual primary care for their associates, and we reduced their spend by 11%. That's in like Med City News or something. They went to the press with it. That was their press release, not ours.
Yeah.
So Grand Rounds provides virtual primary care for all the Walmart employees, which is the world's largest employer. And we do tailor-made ice road truckers, Comcast, Costco, you name it. I mean, any place you go to a place that has access to included health, the employees, any weekend you go out.
Yeah.
And Home Depot still, and JP Morgan. I mean, it goes on and on.
That's incredible. I mean, to get that many companies to switch over, and you said you guys started in what, 2012?
2012, yeah.
2012. So 13 years later, I mean, this seems like a lot of challenges. I mean, you're talking about health insurance, which is like a broken system by, as far as we can tell, most doctors feel that way. How was that like? What was like the biggest challenge to get all these especially larger companies on board?
Yeah, well, so, the good news is we lay on top of the health insurance plan. So like I tell, like the insurance is like the super tanker that costs millions and millions of dollars. What's the most important part? It's the captain at the top of that super tanker and make sure you can get where you need to go. And then also have people on board that actually know what they're doing if something's not going right. Like, oh, you're going the wrong direction. You should not have to pay for that claim. What's your deductible? It's really, what I would tell people is it's just so important when you start a company is to walk and then run. And especially in healthcare, you have to build the trust. So we started the company with just doing expert opinions where we could clearly show like the patient was going to get this therapy. They got an expert opinion with included health and it changed the diagnosis or treatment. And we've done hundreds of thousands of second opinions at this point. And the stat is still the same it was after the first 60 that I analyzed when I started the company. 66% of the patients have a major change in diagnosis or treatment. So out of that 66%, 75% is related to treatment and 25% is to diagnosis, including even like a family member of mine. No, you do not have melanoma. That your doctor told you we had it, world expert look at it, that's some funky nevus. You don't have melanoma. So it's been pretty impactful.
That is incredible. Such a value, especially to employees, this sort of like peace of mind on top of your insurance.
Right. It's basically, we used to tagline, it's like having a doctor in the family.
Yeah.
So like everybody that's listening to this podcast, when someone that they know or love gets sick, they call them and say, hey, does this make sense? Should I go to the emergency room? Should I get a second opinion? Should I get surgery? And you're especially interventional radiologist, we're so well trained across so many specialties. You can usually be like, yeah, that sounds right.
Right.
Or like, ooh, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you had a great quote from that prior episode where you said, you're either a medical insider or you're not.
Yes.
Exactly. And that is, I mean, I went through that with my dad when he got his lung cancer diagnosis. Like I realized that helping him navigate through even just Ohio State healthcare system, which you think would be like really, advocate for patients, it was not the case. And so if I wasn't there, like who knows where he would have been sent.
Well, it's funny that actually there's a number of listeners on this podcast that are people that are physicians, that when their loved one got sick, they couldn't get the right care. They called me and I put them in touch with Included Health and got them through the healthcare issue. I was just actually at my Ohio State Medical School reunion last weekend, and a handful of my classmates have contacted me to help them navigate complex stuff by using Included Health. So it's a really powerful company that does great things.
Yeah.
And the team is just absolutely amazing. It's still my co-founder and CEO, Owen Tripp, has been running it since 2012.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm a Columbus native, love Ohio State, OHIO. But yeah, I wasn't aware, like there were so many barriers to overcome with a new cancer diagnosis, right? And to navigate these big healthcare systems, you really need an advocate. And so I forgot that you were Ohio State alumni.
Yeah, and actually the chief medical officer for the past 20 years was my roommate and in the wedding.
Oh, no
I could have helped you with literally a text. So
yeah, I called up Mina Macri, who's, an IR over there, and he was like, Aaron, here's what you need to do, And so if I didn't know Mina, I would have been dealing with outpatient doctors and all kinds of stuff.
For sure.
Well, anyway, so the other great, and this is a great segue to getting to what you're currently up to, is the other great quotes that you had from the prior episode, and this is just entrepreneur speak, is just, you're saying like, you're not going to wake up one day and somebody's going to tell you to start a company. Like you got to just go do it. Like enough with this analysis paralysis. You just got to go do. And whenever I give a talk about entrepreneurship, that I quote you verbatim from that episode because it's 100% right on. And you have way more experience in this space, but like, I'm sure you have people approaching you all the time. Are you still like, is there any added advice that you give people?
I don't know. I don't think you need any advice, Aaron. Like you have built such a successful franchise with Backtable. Like it's really the talk of the town nationally and internationally. So I think I should be taking advice from you. And that actually, so I probably do for the past 8 or 9 years, once, Grand Rounds really started hitting traction, or it's included health. I do 2 to 4 meetings a week with entrepreneurs for their like, what do you think I should do? Or is this a good idea? And I also meet with startups, and I'm now going to send them some of this to you so that you can give them some of your advice. But no, it's still just like, just go start doing. Like you just got to start and iterate, and don't be wed to one thing, and figure out how you're going to get cash flow fast. So, and build trust, especially in healthcare. But like, again, I should be interviewing you about how you made Backtable so successful.
Well, and some of it is a random luck. Like we kind of stumbled upon the podcast thing, because we were creating content marketing for an app that we were trying to build. And the app was like not really taken off. And I have some questions about wisdom along those lines. It's really hard to get docs to put time into something, right? And so you have to, like with media, what we realize is like we have to create the easy button for them. Like right. We have to make it so it's super easy for them to share their expertise.
For right? Sure.
And so we built out the whole podcast production infrastructure, because we realized like and we rode this wave. That's part of the luck, is we rode this wave of podcasting as a medium, but this is probably a good segue into wisdom and what you're trying to do.
But yeah, well, do we talk about, but I don't want to you glossed over something that was really important that you're not giving yourself enough credit, is the insight to be in that medium right before it took off. Like that wasn't luck. That was, you were like, this is where people are going to learn whatever they want to learn in the future. And I'm going to start now working on that. It's the same thing I did with Grand Rounds and digital health and all that type of stuff. And it's in like stents, like all the stuff, like you knew that this was going to be the next big thing, and you build a franchise around it. So do not sell yourself short.
Well, thanks, Rusty. I appreciate that. Yeah. So speaking of how doctors learn, like, yeah, you're right. I was like, well, this is, every phone comes with a podcast player on it. And I noticed like myself and then younger generation, those journals that come in the mail, they go right in the recycling bin. And conferences, more challenging to get to as you get busy, you have a family, you might go to one conference. Unless you're getting asked to give talks, it's really challenging to go to conferences. They're expensive, right? So like on-demand content really, to me, stuck out as something that would be a great thing to deliver. And again, podcasting being one way. Tell me about wisdom and sort of how, where we are with that.
Yeah, so wisdom is really, it's our tagline is see one, do one, teach one, redefined.
Yeah.
And if you think about how we learn in medicine, it's an apprenticeship about this is how you do it, and then you learn how to do it, and then you teach other people. But at the same time, my oldest son, Hayden, he's at the time was a second-year medical student, or first-year medical student at USC. He'd gone to Stanford, majored in computer science. And I was like, hey, how are you liking, lectures and stuff like that? He goes, oh, I don't go to class. And I'm like, well, what do you mean you don't go to class, Hayden? He goes, nobody goes to class. He goes, well, no, Dad, actually 9 people go to class. And it's a class of like 150. And I go, well, Hayden, there should be 10. Like, you should be going to class. Yeah. He's like, oh, no, I use these flashcards and they're cartoons. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And so I looked into it. It's something called OnKey, which is a $25 app. So I'm paying $100,000 a year for my son to use a $25 app to learn medicine. And, he's done very well, and he's actually going into interventional radiology. So he's applying for residencies now. But I realized that the generation of currently want to learn differently, and they really want digital.
Yeah.
But then when I looked at what's the digital medium, I was like, wait, it's a PowerPoint. PowerPoint was built in 1995 for a large auditorium in person with a very animated person on stage, and then an audience where you could interact and just kind of refer to a few lines of text. We then bastardized it into like just copy and paste abstracts that we do, or charts out of our papers, because we're too lazy to like distill it down, and we'll put a little yellow arrow on something. And so, okay, well, that sort of worked for in person. And then we've now distilled it to like looking on your phone and a little head of like Rusty Hofmann talking. I'm like, this is so broken. We need to build purpose-built education for really mobile. Right. And it needs to be that intimate interaction, just like a TikTok or an Instagram or something like that. And we, just like you're in the room with me. So we really want to build content that is just like you're standing next to me in a case, or you're in my lecture when I'm doing a chalk talk, which is a very interactive format. Yeah. So that was the impetus to start building this out, not only for medical students and residents, but also like really complex stuff. I was just up at UCSD yesterday, and I was watching Sean Tutton do like some crazy like MSK stuff. And then he showed this really cool hack of like how to like make sure your needle is in the laser beam. It's like a little square. He said he just saw this in Europe. It's like you just cut a piece of paper and you put your needle through it, like midway up. So here's the needle. You just take a piece of paper that's sterile, and it goes right in the middle. And then when the laser beams from the Siemens equipment, you can see that your needle is right in the center of the X and advance it. I mean, it's such a little hack. Right. So it's just little stuff like that. But then it's also big stuff, like how do you get through a popliteal vein, chronic occlusion?
Right. So how do you envision this content getting created?
Right. Yeah. So when you're talking about like, what's the easy button?
Right.
So the easy button is you use your iPhone, you don't need, and you just record yourself in the room or doing something interesting, whether it's like, it needs to really be micro learning. So it needs to be like 2 to 5 minute video of you doing something, and it can be multiple clips. And if you upload it to Wisdom, it's going to submit a Pearl, because the videos that we're creating are called Pearls. Yeah. And we will edit it, splice them together, put captions in there, just like TikTok. We actually use the software that TikTok uses, CapCut, and also graphics. I have an editing team that will put this together, and then up it goes. But what you do is, like, if you think about like in my world, popliteal vein angioplasty, like there's like a minute where 1 or 2 minutes where you talk about the clinical history and the pre-procedure imaging. Yeah. And then there's a 2 or 3 minute video of like, okay, this is the equipment that I'm going to be using. I'm going to use a Triforce, which I get royalties on. So I'm always want to make sure I disclose, I worked with Cook to develop that, and, this angioplasty balloon or whatever. And then you record whatever's in the room. I do a lot of save fluoros, so I can record it after the fact. Yeah. And then, the team does a great job editing, and then we make tiles. Because right now at Stanford, a lot of the education is recorded and then put in a box folder. So I looked to see like how many people over the past 3 or 4 years have gone into the box folder. It was 0. Right. Like no one and it's like a terrible UI. Yeah. It's like, it's a folder 2022. Right. The date, like it doesn't tell you that this was like a Y90 talk by John Louis or something like that. Yeah. So we need to create this, and I'm hoping everyone has something to share, some unique way that they approach it. And there's not, was the great thing about IR, there's not one way to do things, there's like 10. And so like, it'd be cool to see the 10 different ways that people do perc nefs or a Y90 or a venous stent.
So when you got this started, like, are there other people that helped you get this started, or contributors?
Yeah, well, it's great. I actually, believe it or not, started something like this 20 years ago called irexcellence.com. It was a conference that was in Chicago. We flew fellows in, 30 of them, and I had like 8 of the who's who in IR to come talk to them in a very structured format. So it's like, we have on Wisdom, the Wisdom format is case-based, starts with clinical presentation all the way to like seminal articles. And you can see that on the website, where each part of Wisdom is, it's 2 to 5 minutes. Like the supplies is like 2 minutes, intra-procedure maybe 5 minutes, post-procedure follow-up maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So I had that same format 20 years ago. We created a website called irexcellence.com. And I've been wanting to do it for years, but I've been too busy with all the other stuff at Stanford. So when I got this new job to be chief of industry partnerships for the health system at Stanford, and then was no longer chief, I had the bandwidth. And there was this, he's been a frequent person on Backtable, Eric Keller, who I like an amazing human. He and I started talking about doing this stuff, and he has actually a website called learnir.org, which actually he started, and we started talking about whether we could work together or not. And he obviously is in North Carolina. He's still working on this. I'm working on that. So Eric was great. Oz Ahmed, one of my trainees from 10 years ago, was kind enough to submit some content. And then some of my faculty back at Stanford, Lynn Martin and Matt Hung and, John Louie and Nishida Katari have created content. And so I'm really grateful for the people that are like, hey, this sounds like a good idea. Like, wait, all I have to do is talk. I'm like, yeah, just talk and I'll take care of the rest. So just really grateful to all those people that were early believers.
I saw Oz has like a trailer on your website.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, it's on geniculate artery embolization. Oh, and one other person that actually was very helpful. He's a resident in at University of Chicago, Danny Heller.
Okay.
He's very gifted editor, and so those I would have been remiss if I didn't include Danny. Danny was in the early days.
Fantastic. I want to talk a little about curation organization because that's where we left off, because that is like a huge challenge, right? And we even have that challenge right now because we have over 1,300 episodes. And I was just talking to Sabine the other night. He's like, I love all our content, but I have a really hard time sometimes finding what I'm looking for.
Well, that's primarily because Sabine can't count to 1,300.
Well, and the story I had for Sabine was, part of the reason why Sabine became a regular guest and then a host was we were at a conference. I won't name which one, but he was like kind of butthurt that he wasn't speaking.
Right.
He was we were all the listeners and there was this panel and he was like, man, I should be up there. Like I have all this expertise I want to share. And I was like, dude, let's have you on Backtable. Like I'd love to get that in front of people. Right. We can get it way in front of way more people than the 50 people sitting here. Let's do it. And so he was all excited and into it. And that's sort of how Sabine came on board. Was I recognized that like there's all these guys out there, young, hungry, high volume guys like Sabine who want to share this, but they're not getting the invites like we were talking about.
For sure. Yeah. Well, that's a key reason to actually contribute to Wisdom or Backtable is that it's for professional development. When I started in my career, I was doing I was 1K for, a few years and realized I'm gone from my family. I'm gone from my division. I'm gone from my patients.
Yeah.
Like this is not good. And so for a decade, people probably noticed like I stopped traveling so that I could focus on the things that were important to me back home with my faculty and my family, and my faculty or my second family. And this using Wisdom is a much better platform where you can create what you're awesome at. You don't need an invite. And then you also don't have to hop on a plane and go someplace. And you also can get feedback about what you're doing. And then the one thing that I'm telling people is that like when you go up for letters for promotion, you need a letter. And, for your research, if you're a researcher, it's like, what's your H index? How many things got quoted? But like, there's no way to quantify your academic, your educational impact other than like, I gave a talk here, and here, which you may have gave a talk to like 4 people at the 8 a.m. session on Thursday at SIR. Speaking about me, I always get the top billings. But here I'd be like, hey, listen, we can do analytics on this, and this is how many people from this many countries.
Right.
Look, like I know where all these people are coming. We have there's a contingent of people from Kenya that just love the stuff that we're putting up on Wisdom. So it's just a much more efficient way to build your name and your brand and your impact and learn. Then you also were asking about curation.
Yeah.
So ultimately as Wisdom grows, it's basically going to have a similar structure to a journal where there's an editorial board of that when things get submitted, it just gets reviewed. It'll take you 5 minutes to review something for Wisdom that's just to make sure it's safe and not crazy.
Right.
And if it's crazy, then it gets booted. The great thing about owning the company, the same thing with you, is like, if I don't think something's good, I'm going to pull it because I have ultimate control over the content that gets up there. I don't expect that. And I really want people to be respectful. And we could talk a little bit about like morning rounds and what that will look like. But it's really, I want to do for education what like Instagram and TikTok has done for popular culture. Because ultimately with all this content, we'll be able to create customized feeds for like my son, the 4th-year medical student at USC, versus like Sabine, very senior skilled interventional radiologist, and have different types of things that it gets surfaced from videos and then other stuff that gets populated in morning rounds.
That's a great point right there. Personalized learning is going to be the key thing, because that's what we don't get on Spotify, Apple, YouTube right now, right? Like I can go search, YouTube's the number 2 search engine. I can go there and search for, some venous procedure tips, but I'm also going to get all the SNL skits that I like to watch in my algorithm on the right, and I'm going to get distracted and I'm gone. I'm not in learning mode anymore, right? So that's also kind of, a shared mission for us is to create more personalized learning opportunities.
Also, I think this is where you are going, is that it's a special space. I mean, there's a reason there's libraries and they're quiet. It's so you can go read and learn, right? It's not there. We don't have the library part of the supermarket.
Right.
You need a place where you can go and listen and think and try and digest it and focus, as opposed to on LinkedIn or Twitter, you'll be like, oh, there's a conference going on. I wasn't invited to that conference. And like it's just not a good, you get too distracted. Like, and I'm a huge Will Ferrell fan. So I have the same, or Farley. That's, Tommy Boy's one of the greatest movies ever written.
Oh yeah. Will Ferrell's the best. The Funny or Die, I get, now those are on my algorithm, my Instagram algorithm.
Yeah. My buddy was the CEO for Funny or Die for a number of years.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Well, I like this idea of being a similar structure to a journal, online journal. And we've talked about that in the past, is like how important, and so, especially for certain specialties like oncology, there's so much information constantly coming out, new therapies. It's impossible for a community doctor to stay up to date. And so a lot of people are hungry for just like the short snippets. And right, you're probably aware of open evidence, right?
Yeah, oh, for sure. It's in my backyard.
Yeah. And so obviously AI driven, I think is genius. And I think it's going to be a super useful tool for physicians. But even y'all's URL is medicalwisdom.ai. Are you guys incorporating AI into your platform?
No, well, so it's funny. It was .com was going to cost $100,000 and .ai was like $10. So that's why we're .ai. So no, it was just a URL that was snappy and makes people think. I mean, we use AI for editing, which, like the editing software that you guys use and we uses AI to just make it easier. But the part of the, with morning rounds, which is like this social media piece of wisdom. And again, wisdom is a closed platform. You have to be in healthcare.
Yeah.
Like you have to be part of either the provider side or the medical device or pharmaceutical industry. It's not for an electrician to watch how we do cases. I really think it's that spirit that really respects the doctor-patient relationship.
Yeah.
Like at Stanford, we've never really put stuff up on social media or anything because our group's lens was like, this is a private interaction with patients. But here's actually a learning platform where you're trying to teach other people. And so the Pearls is this educational library that'll ultimately turn into a feed. And then morning rounds is really just think about like a morning rounds where you talk about a cool case or interesting article. It's just a little snippet and you can just put it up there and say, hey, how would someone do this? I mean, I guess you could say SIR Connect is sort of that. And I think SIR Connect does some good things. The downside is the user interface I don't find to be, it's 2006. Sorry, SIR.
It's not mobile first, right?
It's not mobile first. Yes, we'll be launching a mobile app. This is a URL now, but a mobile app will be coming out in about 6 months. But you can interact with other people around the country. And then what I envision in morning rounds, instead of the PDF that gets put up on LinkedIn or Twitter, I'm so happy to have this published in blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Imagine instead that you just basically create a video that's like, hey, it's Rusty. I just got a paper published in JVIR on stenting over the renal veins. Here are the 3 things you need to know. You can do it. It doesn't cause a problem. We looked at 50 patients and it was a case-controlled study. If you want to learn more, here's the PDF.
Right.
So it allows people to be like, oh, I don't like Rusty. I'm not going to read that paper, or I don't do venous stent. I'm going to skip over it. But if you're interested, you can get all the real data down to the PDF. So it's a more efficient way to, in my opinion, to learn and stay up to date.
Right. 100%. So you mentioned it's not open to public. So it's for healthcare workers, physicians, nurses, techs,
APPs, everything. So the overall business model, which is I'm working on, is education everywhere in this world is subsidized.
Yeah.
In our country, most of it is subsidized by our government, which we're seeing some issues with that right now. In graduate medical education, as you know, much of it is sponsored by industry.
Yeah.
So I'm working with industry to create some content for them, either directly or they want to learn, they want access to how we do stuff. Like their engineers can't get into the cath labs anymore because it's so locked down. And so this is a place where we can create the content, and industry can be like, oh, wow, I never saw someone do this case that way. I never saw our device used this way. Oh, wow, Dr. So-and-so's in my territory. I want to see how he does this procedure, or I've heard of Dr. So-and-so. So it's a way to create content for everybody that's appropriate. But there's 2 types of learners, which is interesting, which why I think this business model will work. It's the early learner, so that's medical student and resident, and then the advanced learner, which is like practicing attending that's been out 10 years. But over here in the early learners, it's basically, we'd call it med essentials or basics. The other people that are in this early group are techs, nurses, APPs, but also sales, marketing, and R&D.
Right.
So all of this content is the same for there, whereas the master classes, and if people are interested in master classes, or both, let me know, is then for this more curated, complex, like a perfect master class would be Riyadh doing PVR tips, right?
Right.
Or maybe Riyadh doing anything.
Yeah.
He
doesn't do basic.
So yeah, well, and he looks so good on camera. Yeah, so that's kind of the way that I'm thinking about it right now. It's free for people that are healthcare professionals, and I'm charging industry to have access to the content.
Access to it. And do they have access to like the data around what people's listening to, what people are interested in, what they're listening to? That sort of thing?
No, well, so a couple of things. We're really committed to transparency. So you'd be like, well, how do I know that Rusty isn't a consultant for Stryker or whatever? So anything that gets produced, we will have a disclosure on the video. We can pull it from the Sunshine Act. Actually, on morning rounds, there is a direct link to open payments.
Okay.
So anytime you want to go on morning rounds, you can see someone post something if the disclosures, ultimately we're going to have an API that pulls us in directly from the Sunshine Act, but you can go to open payments and you can see Rusty Hofmann, and you can see who took me out to dinner or whatever the consulting stuff is. So, and then if somebody if a large corporation funds content, there will be something at the very beginning and at the very end that said this was supported by pick your company, whoever we're working with.
Yeah, which is what we do. I mean, that's our disclosures. Basically, we start out with, it's either an ad or it's something saying that this was sponsored, so that everybody knows.
Everybody knows. I'm very transparent.
Yeah, and that's key. The other question I had was around authentication when you have a healthcare worker coming on. How do they prove that they're a physician?
Right. So there are ways to do that are actually very, very expensive. And since I'm a startup and scrappy, I'm doing it the inexpensive way.
Yeah.
You have to use your institutional email.
Okay. All right.
So I can see that, you're at usc.edu or stanford.edu. I know and then obviously for industry, they need to use their industry, bd.com or bsci.com or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the way that I'm tracking. And I have discrete user analytics. I can delete someone instantly if they're a bad actor.
Like sketch or something.
And it really, that's the part of this. The thing with the social media stuff that I've seen on Twitter, sometimes on SIR Connect, things kind of escalate. Like this needs to consider you're in the hospital outside a patient's room and you're talking about a patient or a case. That's the level of professionalism.
Yeah.
And there's guidelines and everything on morning rounds on how to do it, unlike what we expect.
Okay. Have you talked to anybody else I know you talked to Scott Becker, other people in the media space.
Well, thank you for the intro because of you.
Yeah. He's great. He's a great resource. And then there's others there's other similar companies out there. And we mentioned Open Evidence, which is, we're not today, AI is just a whole different beast that we're not equipped internally to be able to even try at yet. But, it comes down to organization and making, like Sabine's problem, basically getting the information to somebody at the time they need it or want it, right? So the reason I was asking about is I was asking about, have you looked at VUMedi or what they're up to? I know that they're also kind of playing the same space.
Yeah, so VUMedi is one of the reasons I'm started this company.
Yeah.
And the CEO I know well. He's been in my office multiple times. I actually even I've helped him to try to raise money. So what I look at VUMedi, and I understand their business model, but they're capturing the exhaust of a dysfunctional educational system. They're capturing the exhaust of these PowerPoint presentations with too much information and a little head in the corner, or somebody's in their office, dimly lit room, late at night. And it's fine. It serves a purpose, but it's not, I just think it's antiquated. And so I think that having purpose-built Instagram, TikTok type of stuff is going to be a much more engaging way to learn.
Right.
But we'll see. And they built a great business. I think, and they have a place.
Right.
But what I want wisdom to be is like I was just talking with Brooke Spencer last night, and maybe other people. Every time I reconstitute thrombin, I do it wrong. So I always I say, get 2 things of thrombin. That's that much? I'm like, no, because I'm going to screw up the first one. And so you read the instruction for use, and it's always it's not intuitive.
Right.
So I've created a video of how to do it properly. So anytime you've done something, but we know how to do almost everything. All we need to see is oh yeah, you do this or that, or okay, oh, that's what that now anatomic variant looks like. You can then quickly refresh it if you're out in private practice or if you're a resident getting ready to prep. The other thing that's been great with the videos, and I'm hoping academic centers I will create custom pages for academic centers where they can put their own content. So I do a bunch of posterior tibial access, but I only do it maybe once or twice a month. I have a certain setup that makes it all work so that you can get into the PT and do it. And I have different techs and nurses and trainees. And so the night before the case, I will text the team, the techs, nurses, I'll say, we're doing a posterior tibial access tomorrow. This is how I do it. And so in there, they can see that I use NitroPace and a tourniquet and a pediatric micropuncture kit. So everything is there for me in the room, and everyone knows what to expect on how we're going to go and how to set up the whole room, right?
Yeah.
Preference cards can tell you the equipment, but they can't tell you some of the nuances. I like to have the leg, kind of externally rotated so I can go straight down.
Yeah. What do you because this has happened to us where we've, especially early days, trying to set up podcasts in weird place. We used to try and do them at conferences, but it's the audio is horrible. Everybody's distracted, right? What do you do about, and maybe this already happened to you, where somebody submits a video and it's it's a great technique, but the video itself sucks.
Well,
right?
There's to me, my thesis is the video needs to be good enough. There's something I tell, as I mentor my trainees and my junior faculty is I was a tennis player in high school, was perfect your second serve. Your second serve is a serve that just gets in and gets the point going. First serve is takes it, and doesn't require a lot of effort. First serve takes a ton of effort and is exhausting and misses the mark sometimes. So with this, that's why with the content for wisdom, it just needs to be good enough. It needs to be that you're not going to get motion sickness watching it.
Right.
It needs that you can hear it. All the videos we've done, I've not used any like AirPods or audio recording. It's all been off my iPhone and people's iPhones work or microphone. I think there is going to be time where we're going to have to say, I've recorded stuff that I'm like, oh geez, that didn't come out right. I have to make sure next time I have a little bit better lighting or something. But by and large, I just want it to be, as long as I think it's something that I would want to watch, then it passes the mustard.
Right, exactly. And so as long as the content itself within it, because sometimes some societies do this where it looks super polished, there's a stage and everything, but it's a lot of fluff. And it's like not even worth watching because the content itself is fluff. But when you have like really good content, people are more forgiving with sort of the quality of audio video.
Right.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
Which is why I'm like, why did people listen to the first 50 episodes? They were not very good.
It's because they couldn't get it anywhere else. Like, so if it's a different format and if it's good content, like in my opinion, content beats anything all day long, like whether it's super, graphics or whatever, you can that's the other thing I've learned with the video, which I don't know whether you do this with like, where I'll be talking about something in a case and then I'll forget like some key, like I was giving a talk on like portal hypertension, it was for a device company, and about like, cirrhosis and bilirubin, and it's a talk about how why the Grinch is a cirrhotic patient. And I said, yeah, it's, he had cirrhosis, and I realized I forgot to say that it's because it's accumulation of bilirubin in it. So in post editing, I have little graphics that come up is like when the liver fails, the bilirubin, which is yellow, goes up, and so that you can correct if you don't complete the story in post with graphics.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of editing, right? Yeah. And our engineers know that well. So I wanted to dive into one other topic. I love talking to you about the media space because I think, and we've talked about some of the other people in the space, there's so much innovation that happens in IR, in MedOnc, in ENT, but not in this medical education delivery space. Right. Like we're still doing, like you said, the antiquated things. Via Medi kind of like piggybacked off of, just taking lectures and making them on demand. Okay, that's a nice innovation. But like we need to continue to innovate on how people can learn this stuff and keep up in their daily practice. And the new generation, they don't read like we did.
Right, for sure.
Like you did. I was probably in the middle, but I don't know if they read at all. Like, like I talked to Tyler and some other people who have trainees. They're like, these guys don't read. Like I have to like send them videos and stuff to get them to learn this stuff. And so I think it's meeting them where they're at, like meeting these new trainees where they're at. And one of the things that we do to try and stay up to speed with the younger generation is we hire med students to help with like all of our content. For sure. We have trainees who come on the show and like give us feedback and stuff, because in 5 years, they're all those early attendings who are going to be, the listeners. Right. And so it sounds like how much market research did you do when you were kind of like crafting the product itself? Something, for example, like morning rounds and pearls.
Yeah, well, it's funny. My kids laugh at me that I created a social media platform because I've been telling them for a decade that social media is a cancer. and so like, it's bad. Like, we know, Dad. But I just really watched. I think, one thing I actually think, in fairness to our trainees, is I think, and I've done a deep dive, I think we're doing a disservice to our students by not making them get grades their first 2 years of medical school and not have a grade on their step one. Like that was an incredible incentive when I was a medical student, that I knew if I worked really, really hard, you could get junior AOA and then you could get a residency anywhere. Right. So that was okay, that's something I want to achieve. And the other part is, I don't know whether people are for any trainees that are listening, if you're in a radiology residency, you need to read or be learning at home for an hour every day. That's the only way you can learn all of IR or all of radiology. So if no one has set that expectation, that is the expectation. And that's how you will turn out to be a great doctor. And what I so I have my oldest, it's a fourth year at USC in med school. My youngest is a first year at Cornell Med. And then my middle son actually is a clinical specialist for Boston Scientific in the Bay Area doing like cryoablation. So all of them are actually, and my youngest says he wants to do IR. And what I've tell all of them, like when Baylor, even the person in industry was training, and I tell my kids is no patient has ever complained to me that I studied too much in medical school.
Right.
Like you got to know your stuff.
Yeah.
And so I've just watched the transition and people not knowing basic stuff when I would ask them, at rounds. I'm like, well, maybe they just need to learn differently, just like my son doing Anki and not going to the $100,000 lectures. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and create something and see whether this will actually help solve the problem or make the problem better.
Right.
And it was just really my time, both as a father watching my kids and also as an educator. I've spent my career at Hopkins or Stanford. The people there are really smart.
Yeah.
And if they're struggling, then I think people are struggling elsewhere.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can't force it on them. And I think that's a great rule to live by, the 1 hour. And maybe if they had a late tips and they didn't get that hour in, maybe there's a few things that they can watch on the train home, on wisdom.
Well, maybe they should do a half hour Backtable and half hour wisdom.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. That's the recipe for success.
Exactly. Well, so last thing I want to touch on, I want to ask you, what does success look like in 3 to 5 years?
Actually, I think you just said success for me.
Yeah.
It's like if there's a doctor or resident on the train home watching wisdom, that's success.
Yeah.
Or somebody's in between watching football game and it's a blowout on Sunday Night Football. And they're like, let me just pull up and see if there's I can learn for 2 to 5 minutes. Ultimately, I would like to be able to grant CME for this. I have some interesting thoughts about how to deal with the CME program. There's things that I'm looking at, which is a very
antiquated.
Yeah. But I've been good. Like when I started grand rounds and told people, when I started doing venous stenting, I remember I did this complex double barrel venous stenting in 2001 at Hopkins, and I presented a vascular conference, and Bruce Perler, the chief of vascular surgery, looked at it and goes, I have never seen anything like this. I reconstructed the IVC and the iliacs. And so I'm like, and he goes, but there's no other solution. I'm like, yeah, you're right. There's no other solution. And so I've always been like, okay, I think there's something new, similar to your insight with the podcasting and Backtable. And then I just go set out to proof it and then actually make my future.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. I'm hoping that people will, contribute and understand that this is really what I want to be, is the go-to place. And in 10 years, well, actually, what looks like the capability of the software that we're using right now, in about 6 months, we're going to be able to auto-translate our videos into 10 languages.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So then now you have the opportunity to educate the world.
Right.
With how they do something at UCSD or UCSF or, Hopkins or wherever, Northwestern.
And again, way more focused and tailored than finding on YouTube.
I just hope it's the trusted resource for anybody that's like, oh, wait, I haven't done that in a while. Let me go look how to do this case. Or wait, I want to learn something new. And here's a place where I can see 7 different ways to do a tips.
Right.
I was talking to Zeev Haskell last night, and, Zeev is the master at tips. And we were just discussing, and, I think we have the technology, and I think people just need to think about, instead of spending all this time building PowerPoint presentations for lectures that you're hopping on planes and flying around the world, that's incredibly inefficient.
Right.
Start building content that you can put online, that it's measurable, impactful, and can start dialogues with, you're also building your brand with industry. They're like, oh, wow, that person actually can talk. Industry actually asked me whether I could create a whole speakers bureau where they could pull people, because they think, oh, that person's famous. I'm going to have them come to Minneapolis, and then they give a talk, and oh my God, the person's not a very good speaker.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff that you can do off of this, but it just really starts at the fundamental of good educational content.
100%. That would serve industry really well for them to be able to find better speakers.
Yes.
100%. Well, I think that's actually a great place to wrap it up. Any final thoughts? Anything we left behind?
No, I just, again, sitting here in your studio in San Diego and remembering when Hartley asked me to do this back, 6 or 7 years or 5 or 6 years ago.
Probably like 2019.
I remember, it's so funny. I remember I was so busy and they had an issue with the audio that I'm like, you get 20 minutes and I have to go. Like I have to go to another meeting. And I didn't realize how, in retrospect, I'm like, I should have spent like an hour and a half talking to these guys, because it's been you've made such a huge contribution to interventional radiology. And I know you're into other specialties that I'm cheering from the sidelines for Backtable to continue its success.
Appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully there's ways to collaborate in the future. It's funny because Harley told me about that afterwards. He's like, I was so nervous because, Rusty had to go at the hour, like at 30 minutes or something. Yeah, you were like tightly scheduled. And I listened to it. I was like, Brian, that is the most succinct, one of our best episodes. Because it was like, you just cut, it was clearly, not that it was rehearsed, you just had it down. And I don't think it required much editing either, because it was so quick and to the point, and definitely one of Harley's best. So, but yeah, thanks again, Rusty. Appreciate you coming out, and looking forward to seeing what Wisdom has.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe, follow, and rate the show. Let us know how we're doing and what we can do to improve it. We work really hard at making this a valuable resource for you, and we want to continue to do that. So give us your feedback. Lastly, tell a colleague about the show. We think they'll like it. If you have any questions or comments, direct message us at _Backtable on Instagram, LinkedIn, X, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Backtable is hosted and produced by myself, Chris Beck, and co-hosts
Ali Behetti,
Michael Barraza, Sabine Dond,
and Aaron Fritz.
Our production team is led by Kieran Yannon,
Aaron Bowles,
Gabe D'Agrazio,
and Josh Spencer.
Design and digital marketing led by Brian Schmitz.
Social media and PR by Donato Cavuto.
administrative support provided by Judy Dela Cruz.
Thanks again, and see you next time.